So I have to say right up front that I love this bonkers attraction. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was one of the original attractions that opened with Disneyland in 1955. Loosely based on the Wind in the Willows property and the 1949 animated feature The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, the ride was designed as a dark ride, taking guests through a chaotic motorcar trip inspired by the film's lead character J. Thaddeus Toad. While it became known for its unusual ending and eccentric design choices, the ride's origins were firmly rooted in the earliest years of Disney theme park planning. And really quickly, before we dive into the history of this ride, I just wanted to say thank you to the viewer on screen, you don't even know me bro, for suggesting Mr. Toad's Wild Ride for this deep dive video. If there's an attraction or a ride, a land, a show that you would like me to deep dive into in the future, just drop in the comments and let me know. I'll give you a shout out if it gets picked. And if you've been watching these videos and you're not already a subscriber, maybe now's the right time. Walt Disney and his Imagineering team wanted a mix of family-friendly attractions for Disneyland's opening. Whilst the original concept considered this ride a roller coaster, it was later switched to a dark ride, which was seen as more family-friendly and cost-effective ways of bringing Disney characters to life. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was built on the model of earlier amusement park dark rides, but with more advanced scenic design and vehicle technology. The original 1955 version used a simple but effective ride system. Guests boarded small, single-bench ride vehicles styled as motor cars. These were powered carts that followed a guide rail embedded in the floor. Unlike later Disney dark rides, which used more sophisticated guidance systems, the original relied on straightforward track layouts with sharp turns and collisions designed to mimic reckless driving. Scenic design featured two-dimensional painted flats and plywood cutouts rather than full three-dimensional sets. This choice was partly financial really, but also in line with the exaggerated, cartoonish aesthetic of the source material. The combination of black light paint, minimal lighting and sudden directional changes gave the illusion of speed and chaos in the small show building. And the original version was one of the simplest dark rides in Disneyland. Over time though, the attraction underwent multiple renovations that significantly changed its presentation and technical makeup. The first major update was in 1961, where some of the painted flats were replaced with more detailed cutouts, improving durability and adding dimension. Lighting was reconfigured to strengthen the blacklight effect, making the plywood scenery pop more vividly. In 1967 there were widespread changes to Fantasyland, which included the ride's exterior. It was altered slightly to fit better with the surrounding facades, and though still simple, it was updated to match that Tudor-style look that eventually became the land's defining architectural style. One of the biggest changes came in 1983 with the total overhaul of Fantasyland. This was the most significant change to the ride at this point, and the facade was rebuilt to resemble Toad Hall from the animated film, giving the ride a more authentic and detailed entrance. Inside, the track layout was redesigned and entirely new scenes were built. Scenic elements became a mix of dimensional props and updated cutouts, with more elaborate painted backdrops. A new audio system was added to synchronise sound effects with scenes, and projection effects were introduced in limited areas such as moving headlights and dynamic shadows. This was also when the queue was expanded to handle larger crowds, weaving through the gardens of Toad Hall itself. There were further smaller changes made throughout the 90s and 2000s, including replacing worn plywood with fiberglass, upgrading the sound system, and enhancing lighting rigs with more modern equipment. But these updates helped keep the ride consistent with Disney's show standards, while still retaining the deliberately flat, exaggerated style of the original. So the ride itself, or at least the ride as it is now, started off with you boarding at Toad Hall. You would then weave through the interior of Toad Hall, through the library and then through the fireplace into a hallway lined with books and exaggerated props. You would then burst through into the countryside itself, where you're being waved down by police and you're dodging farmyard animals. And then you're through into the town square and the streets of London itself. And after you've gone through the streets, you're weaving through the docks and the harbour area. Unfortunately, at that point, you're then into the courtroom to be sentenced. And if that wasn't crazy enough, you then get into a train collision and end up in hell before returning to the station. It is a bonkers and hilarious storyline that I don't think you'd replicate in any of the Disney ride today. And the most unusual and most discussed moment in Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is obviously its finale, the hell scene. So after this chaotic motorcar journey, riders encounter an oncoming train and appear to collide with it head on. And then immediately after that impact, the ride transitions into a surreal sequence depicting hell. The sets are lit with red and orange lighting, figures of small devils appear, and the temperature rises as hidden heaters blow warm air onto guests. The ride vehicles weave past glowing demons and fiery backdrops until finally exiting back into the station. I mean, from a technical standpoint, the hell scene was built using the same methods as the rest of the ride: flat cutouts, blacklight paint, and simple dimensional props. But what set it apart were the environmental effects, particularly the heat, which was rare for a Disney attraction at the time. It gave the finale an added sensory impact that, stuck in my mind, as I'm sure it did with many others. The sequence has no basis in the original Wind of the Willows story or the animated adaptation, but instead it was conceived as like a comedic exaggeration of the reckless driving scene, ending not just with a crash but with eternal punishment. Its bizarre tone has become part of the ride's legacy and one of the clearest examples of early Imagineering's willingness to experiment. Mr. Toad's Wild Ride occupies a relatively compact footprint compared to modern Disney attractions. The original 1955 building was a simple rectangular warehouse-style structure tucked into the edge of Fantasyland. The show building was designed with a small interior divided into tight switchback corridors. The track was laid out to maximise sharp turns and rapid direction changes, making the space feel larger than it actually was. Riders often passed very close to previous scenes, separated only by thin scenic walls. Vehicles followed a floor-mounted guide rail which dictated their erratic zigzagging path. And because the ride relied on sudden changes in direction rather than long straight runs, Imagineers were able to compress a relatively lengthy feeling experience into a compact show space. And during that Fantasyland overhaul in the 80s that I mentioned earlier, the ride building was gutted and rebuilt, though it kept roughly the same footprint. The facade was replaced, as I said, with that more detailed Toad Hall exterior, while the interior received new partitions, lighting grids and scenic supports. Even new soundproofing was added to reduce bleed through between scenes, though the ride still retains the close quarters feel of its 1995 design. And in contrast to larger, more immersive Disney attractions built later, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride remains one of the clearest examples of an early dark ride warehouse structure, plain on the outside, densely packed with plywood and paint on the inside, optimised for throughput and efficiency. When Walt Disney World opened in 1971, Imagineers developed a new version of Mr. Toad's Wild Ride for the Magic Kingdom. This wasn't a direct copy of the Disneyland version, but a larger, more technically advanced reimagining. The Florida version featured two separate ride tracks, creating a dueling experience. Each side had its own layout, with overlapping rooms and different sequences, encouraging repeat rides. This dual track setup was unusual for a dark ride and allowed the attraction to handle higher guest capacity. Scenic upgrades included more elaborate three-dimensional set pieces alongside the traditional flat cutouts. The ride vehicles were larger 4-passenger cars instead of the original 2-passenger vehicles at Disneyland. Sound effects and lighting were also expanded, giving the ride a more immersive presentation than the 1955 original. Despite these technical improvements, the Florida version maintained the same eccentric tone and finale as Disneyland's ride. Both tracks concluded with the infamous Hell sequence, which by then had become an expected part of the attraction. And Mr. Toad's Wild Ride operated at the Magic Kingdom until 1998. Its removal, to make way for the many adventures of Winnie the Pooh, sparked controversy among fans, many of whom campaigned to save the ride. At Disneyland, however, the original 1955 attraction remains in operation, though it has been updated over the years with improved sound, lighting and more durable set pieces. The attraction is notable from a technical perspective as one of Disney's simplest but most enduring rides. It represents the early formula: compact show buildings, painted flats, track-based vehicles with sharp erratic turns. Unlike later Disney dark rides which leaned towards elaborate storytelling and animatronics, Mr. Toad's Wild Ride emphasised kinetic energy and surprise. It stands as one of Disneyland's longest running original attractions, and an example of how early Imagineers adapted simple ride technology to deliver a unique guest experience. Its influence can be seen in how Disney continued to evolve the dark ride format in later decades, but its deliberately chaotic tone remains distinct among Disney attractions. I'd love for you to get into the comments and let me know what you thought of this ride, and is it one that you still go back to today? I personally think it's a ride that still holds up, but you'll have to let me know in the comments. And most importantly, if you've got an attraction or a show or a land or a park deep dive video that you'd like to see in the future, just drop down and put it in the comments. If it gets picked, I'll make sure to give you a shout out in the video. And also please pop a like on this video if you've enjoyed it, and consider subscribing to the channel for more of these theme park attraction deep dives. Our community would love to have you here. And if this ride video has interested you, why not check out this video next? Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you all take care. Bye now.